One of the most frequent questions that I get asked is, which keyword tool should I use for my Etsy print-on-demand shop? Or I'll have a client tell me they're using eRank, Everbee, Sales Samurai, and Marmalade all at once, but spending more time comparing the conflicting data than actually making progress. If that sounds like you, or if you're just getting started and not sure which one to try, stick around because for today's video, I'm going to walk you through how I use my favorite research tool and the top 7 things that you need to know about it. In case we haven't met yet, my name is Mandy. As someone who got their start in the handmade world, I am completely obsessed with freedom from fulfillment using Etsy print on demand, and my goal now is to provide you with strategies to simplify the journey so that you can start making progress in your own business. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you might have heard me talk about Etsy Hunt. I had no issues with it, and I did like the Chrome extension, but it got a little glitchy for me after an update, so I don't personally use it much anymore. But if it's working for you, there's nothing wrong with continuing to use it, because I do love that they have a free extension. You've also probably heard me talk about Everbee, and to be honest, I do still really like Everbee, especially for doing product research directly on Etsy. Again, nothing wrong with theirs, and you can also choose to use their email marketing tool within it, and I have tons of people in my membership that still use it regularly, and I personally still pay for my own subscription for it as well. Over the years, I have also used Marmalade, which functions differently by offering predictive data, and I've also used Sales Samurai and Allura, 2 other well-known platforms that basically offer differing variations of similar function. Point being, I've tried lots of them over the years. So all that being said, when I inevitably get asked the question of, but if you could only pick one, my answer remains the same, and that's eRank. It's one of the most affordable options on the market with a basic plan starting at just $5.99 at the time of this video, and you get a full suite of tools for just one monthly price. And no, this video is not sponsored for saying that, and I pay for my own subscription and always have. I actually started using eRank many years ago when I first started on Etsy with my handmade business back in 2017. And so I want to take you behind the scenes on exactly the elements that I use most within eRank. They have something like 40 different tools that you can use within the software, but I want to highlight really the main functions that I use. In the grand scheme of things, all of the systems perform very similar tasks. For me personally, I've used eRank for a very long time and trust the product. But more importantly, the way that the system is designed allows my very visual brain to work more efficiently. As you'll see in a little bit, they utilize graphs and color coding, and that allows me to get the overall gist of the data that I'm looking at. Other systems might provide the same type of data presented in a different way that works better for others. Ultimately, as someone who is an IT project manager and trainer in a past life that works with software implementations all the time with users, what tends to matter the most in terms of a successful software implementation is choosing a platform that works best for the user in terms of process and efficiency. If the process of analyzing data makes more sense to you in Sales Samurai, use that one. If eRank allows you to be more effective during your research time, use that one. Make sure you stay to the end, or I will also talk about the one other element that must go along with your research using your tool of choice. So with that, let's dive in. The first way that I like to use eRank is by using what I call anchor or core niche searches to basically run a broad keyword search to then look for smaller potential sub-niches. So here's what I mean by that. I've got the example of nurse. That's obviously a very, very broad niche, very in general saturated arguably in Etsy. However, that also means that there's some potential to start out in smaller sub-niches within that really big one, and then eventually rank over time and compete in these bigger niches. So for example, with nurse, I can see that yes, this has been a popular keyword on Etsy over the past week, and I can see the broad statistics here, and I can see over time it's slightly gone down, but ebbed and flowed a bit on Etsy. Now, where I dive in further is down below, and these are related keyword ideas. And so at first glance, you just see this first one, and you can sort this in a few different ways. Sometimes what I will frequently search first for is to see where there's some strong search and demand, but where there's perhaps some pockets of lower competition. So to do that, I'll use this average searches and I'll sort by the biggest number first. And so you can see it's going to pull in some other related very broad keywords. And what I'm looking for as I scroll are some other related keywords that I might be able to use in this. So for example, CNA is a slightly lower competition, but there's still strong search and demand for it. So this is something that I might then make a note of. And where my second element in the system that I love is keyword lists. So I don't need to pull out a separate list. I don't need to jot anything down. I can make a keyword list directly in eRank. And then as I'm doing this search as part of my flow, I can just star these as I'm searching. So then I can come back to them when I'm ready to dig in. Pharmacy might be something that's related as an example. EMT is kind of in that related medical field. And so as I keep scrolling, again, I'm just looking for anything that stands out over here in competition as being lower than that really bright red high competition search. Nurse practitioner is another potential one. As we scroll, maybe we want to offer a nurse tumbler. Continue scrolling, and again, this is where we start to see where there is some potential, and I can start to star these keywords and come back to them along the way. I will show you what that list looks like after we've added a few. You can see oncology nurse. The other thing that I will look at here too is these trend lines. So you can see this is looking at search volume over time, specifically to this keyword. And so you can see that there are spikes at certain times of the year. This makes sense around holidays as people are buying gifts for people who are nurses in this example. You can use this also with dogs, with teachers, vacation, family, mommy and me, any type of basic kind of core niche that you can think of. Run those as searches, and then you can start to see where there are related potential keywords that you can then leverage. In this case, they're keywords that are showing up, but really these are sub-niches is what they are in many cases. And even if it's not a sub-niche directly, we saw earlier there was a nurse ornament and a nurse tumbler. So those could be product ideas even based on the keywords that we're seeing that people are searching for. So once we've flagged a few, we can even say Halloween nurse, labor and delivery. Those are a few others in here. So once we've got our list, then what I can do is in my keyword search, as you can see, there's lots of different tools. If I go to keyword lists, you can then start to look at the keyword list that you saved. You can see I've got lots, but here's the nurses one that I just created. And if we click into it, now all of my sub-niches and keywords that I saw as I was doing research, I didn't stop and dig into them in that moment. Now I can see them collectively. And I can do the same thing. I can sort by searches so that I can see exactly where there's some strong potential. So if I'm looking at this list and thinking, I want to go into designing something, I want to design apparel for nurses, or I want to design gifts for nurses, and I've flagged several of these and I've starred them to my list, I could come back to this list and use it to prioritize maybe where I start. I might want to start where there's the most amount of demand indicated first. Maybe I want to create several different designs and listings for EMTs or CNAs or nurse practitioners. Maybe I pick those three, batch some designs, and then I'll move on to the next one. Or maybe, as I said, I decide based on this that I want to start with, incorporating nurse ornaments into my shop because there's strong data there. And I can then use the rest of these sub niches to then start designing for those specific specialties or related fields to these nurse positions. So that is how I like to use those anchor keywords, that broad keyword search, to then dig into and find some additional sub niches, potential keywords for my tags and titles, as well as potential products for those broad niches. The other thing that I like to do with these keyword lists as I collect them and do my research is I can start to monitor keywords over time. And this is how I know that sometimes things start to drop off. For example, 90s Bachelorette. When I first saved this, the searches were higher. But if I start to look at these, I can still see where there continues to be trends. For example, Camp Bachelorette has been trending off and on for at least a year now that I'm aware of. Same thing with Nashville Bachelorette, Disco Bachelorette, some of those themes, again, within Bachelorette. I started this list with the same exact approach. I started with Bachelorette, and then I started to star those keywords that I saw in that list into my keyword list that I created for it. And you can see there's a variety of them, but if I scroll down to searches, some of these were very high at one point. I know these Scottsdale, NOLA Bachelorettes, these were, as you can see, at one point much higher in searches, and you can see that they're not as high as they used to be. Doesn't mean that there's not any searches, but they're not quite to the same volume that they were at one point. Same thing with Nautical or, Mount Bachelorette. These were much higher at one point, but you can see that changes over time, and you can see that and be able to monitor that with your own listings and niches and sub niches. So you can see if something starts to drop off and there's fewer searches, you might be seeing that reflected in your sales. And if you come back here, you might then look at this and do some decision making and adapt your approach to perhaps create more listings in this niche related to camping or Nashville or disco. Or you might start going out and doing some Google searches to see what are some potential new trends or themes for bachelorette parties if this is your niche. So you can use these lists in a variety of ways as you are monitoring the data and trends and keywords that are happening in the marketplace. The other place that I like to use in eRank is bulk keyword tool. So this is one where if I'm thinking about a niche or sub niches and I have some ideas or some very broad themes and I want to check them all at once. So let's say, for example, I want to do some different themes related to sports moms, and I want to compare some of the sports that I know of related to that to see where I can find the best balance in terms of search volume and competition. So let's say I type in football, pickleball, cheer, dance, volleyball, soccer, and baseball. And let's just say we start with those as, again, very broad terms. And so when I search, this is basically going to run a big, broad search on these keywords generally. So when I did that kind of core anchor search individually, this is like doing that exact step, but in mass. So I might be able to see, yes, these are, decent in competition because, yes, I know that these are broad initial keywords. That was intentional. But what I can decipher from this is, number one, trends over time with these types of searches. I can then also compare where is there still high volume in searches, but perhaps more moderate Etsy competition where I might want to start and prioritize. Baseball, for example, and football. These are really huge competition in comparison to the average searches. However, if I look at something like volleyball, for example, or even pickleball or cheer and dance, some of these, when I look at in comparison, especially cheer, pickleball, and volleyball, if I look at this search volume compared to the competition, these are areas where I might then prioritize and try to break into first with some badges, with some volume of listing, checking out on Etsy where there is trends and demand, and diving into those sub niches first to try and get some traction, and then perhaps expand from there and start scaling with additional sub niches over time. But I like this because I can get a very broad view of different keywords. And it doesn't have to be these core keywords. I could even say, I could add mom to all of these. Maybe I want to get even more specific. So I'm just going to do a quick copy paste and add mom to all of these. And maybe I want to have a sports mom shop or some themes around that. So I'll run that search again and see if anything different comes up. So I can see on this dance one, there's still, again, some strong volume happening here. Cheer is another one where, yes, competition is still a little higher, but we also have some strong search volume. Pickleball, in terms of pickleball mom, we saw that broadly that was a really good, strong keyword, but perhaps maybe not on a mom shop, for example, or perhaps maybe we don't start with this one. Maybe we incorporate it down the road. So that is another way where I will sometimes use this bulk keyword tool to really do some faster searches in bulk without having to scroll through and add to a new keyword search every single time. The next area that I like to use is under trends, and it is the monthly trends area. And so when I come to the monthly trends, you can see, again, these are going to be very broad kind of core keywords or anchor keywords, but you can get some good search data here. I like to actually come down to this print on demand area and really look at kind of what are some of the searches happening more specifically here. So I like to sell sweatshirts, especially going into and thinking about Q4. So I would be looking in this area to see, related to sweatshirts on Etsy, what are some of those top monthly trends in terms of searches? And you can get some really good ideas here. So custom college sweatshirt, a lot of custom embroidered. I know that Printify is coming out with embroidery a little later this year in time for Q4. So that could be something to be thinking about. Sweatshirts for women, Halloween sweatshirts, teachers sweatshirts. These are, again, some of those searches that are starting to really trend for the last roughly 30 days. This is from June. So you can see and look back on it, previous ones if you wanted to. So bride sweatshirt, you can see, again, I love to look at these trend lines over here because you can see where the spikes are indicated. So university sweatshirt, we've seen a lot of that varsity collegiate font happening in terms of design trends. So that's showing up in searches as well. If we continue scrolling, obviously you want to avoid, you'll still see searches here from people who are doing, trademark, looking for Taylor Swift and Chicago Cubs and other things. Obviously, we're not going to use those. With 4th of July just recently happening, American flag sweatshirt, makes sense that that was a popular search in June. I can keep scrolling here. Again, a lot of really helpful information, I think, just to really see where some of those higher searches are starting to pop up in terms of trends. Again, you can look at other main product types for print on demand. You can also go back and look at previous searches. So when I think about Q4 and planning, you could look at what were some of those big spikes in searches in, let's say, November of the previous year. Because if it was trending before as a keyword search, quite often, unless it was something very specific to a very unique trend at the time, quite often those trends repeat. So we can look here and again see where these spikes were happening and where some of those big searches were related to, in this case, sweatshirts on Etsy. I'm thinking about, again, niches, sub-niche potential, design style potential, and just really having, again, some helpful information at our fingertips. So I will frequently look at this list and look at recent lists as well to just get some ideas on what's happening in those types of searches. The next area that I like to use in eRank and frequently check out, especially when I'm doing competitor research, is I will look at the top sellers on Etsy. And I do this in a very specific way. So if you just come to this as is, you'll see the top sellers on Etsy. You'll see most sales yesterday, all sorts of really big, exciting numbers. A lot of these shops have been around for years and years. But what I want to specifically look at is I want to look at Etsy's largest market and filter that, which is the United States. I want to look specifically at the product type that I sell in, which is for me clothing for most of my products, not all, but most. And then I want to look at recent shops. Now, depending on when you use this, if it's really early in the year, I'll look at the previous year. Once we get to about halfway through the year, so that's where we're at right now, I will look at both the current year as well as the previous year. And here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these shops that have taken off quickly, meaning they're clearly doing something right. They're typically aggressively growing, and I want to click in and see what these stores are doing. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that you will dig into a lot of the shops on this list, and many of them, yes, will have trademark stuff, they'll have banned stuff, they'll have movie stuff, they'll have all the things that you're not supposed to be selling, right? Those are not the ones that we're looking at. We are digging for and looking at each of these shops to really dig in and see what they're doing in order to do as well as they are in a relatively short amount of time. And you can do the same thing, again, looking at the previous year. This one obviously has now a full year's worth of data. And you can see that these are the shops that have lots and lots of sales. This old school cult, if you've seen any of the memes with like the raccoon on them and some of the others, they do a very kind of vintage old school style look to them. They've got a very specific style in their shop. They did really well, but they just started last year. Some of these shops, as you dig in, you might see that they've got a social media presence. You can go check out their social media if they've got their handle listed on their shop, which some of them do. So you can go see it. Are they deriving sales from somewhere else potentially? But again, it's really helpful to just be able to see these and look at the shops. I'll click into this one just as an example because I'm sure you've seen many of this shop's listings that are out there. They are frequently in some of those bestseller categories. But you can see that, again, as we're scrolling through, we're looking at what is their design style, what are they doing to get these sales. You can see which items have lots of sales. So again, it's just a really helpful way to just see where the competition is and really study and use it as a tool, not to copy by any stretch of the imagination, but to study and learn from others who are finding success. You can learn a lot from these by studying these and being able to look at and see what's working well in some of these shops. What niches are they in? What is their design style? What color palettes are they using? What type of keywords are they using? How do they have their shop structured? Is there anything unique about the products that they're using? So it's a great way to, again, just dive in and get a sense of what's working in other new shops that have seen success relatively quickly. And then another tool that I use in here that is inside the platform before I show you the last one is under tools, and that is their calculators. I've got a few different ones. The main one that I obviously use is the profit calculator. And this is just a nice, easy way to, again, double check that you are pricing correctly. And so when you're using this, it's going to automatically factor in the Etsy side of things, the fees, the listing fees, the payment processing, all of that. And then what you're able to fill in here is your cost information and what you are looking at charging for your customer. So for example, if you are selling a sweatshirt, those can be around, let's say, $12 as a material cost, and maybe you're trying to figure out if you want to do free shipping or not. Well, we all know that shipping is not actually free. Somebody pays for it. So if you're selling a sweatshirt, that might be around $8.45, a rough estimate. I know I'm pretty close on that one. And then when I'm looking at price, let's say when we do our market research, we want to start out with a price of $48. And again, we're going to offer free shipping. So that means we wouldn't have shipping as part of what the customer pays. And so if we ran that calculation, we'd be able to see that the profit is $22.54. So $48 being a little high if it's just a traditional Gildan sweatshirt, we know that we want to be able to run sales. We want to make sure we have enough margin built into our prices, just like any other product-based business, in order to run sales. And so let's say that we want to offer a sale for 20% off. We can see by doing that how that factors into and affects our bottom line, our profit margin. This is where, again, as I said, if we potentially don't want to offer free shipping, and let's say we added that price back in to what the customer is paying, we still have to pay the shipping, so then we can factor that in. If we are charging shipping, that means we don't need to factor in all of that cost into our price. So we could change the price if we wanted to. Quite often, I will control this with just a different type of discount. So we might play around with that. There's a few different ways that you can go with that. Otherwise, if you wanted to set your price at similar to what the market is, again, you could play around. I'm just plugging in different numbers at this point. But the point is you can understand the numbers that you are working with in your business. This is an important part of running a business and being able to have the confidence to understand and learn your pricing structure. To not always feel like you have to ask permission to, should I run a sale? Should I run free shipping? Should I not do free shipping? You don't need permission for any of those. You are running your business. You get to set those prices. Look at what the market is. Do some research. Click into listings to see what your competitors are doing. I'm not talking about the competitors that are racing to the bottom. I'm looking at an average across the market when you're looking in your niche and what other sellers are doing. And then reasonably set your prices and reasonably set your profit at a level that works for you. I know plenty of sellers that are fine with just making a couple bucks of profit, and they'd rather have the volume and they'd rather operate at a lower price point in the market. I tend to be more middle of the road. I'm not going to charge way too high, but I'm typically going to be in roughly the top third of the pricing that's in the market because I'm pricing for profit. I am running a business. I don't want to race to the bottom. I want there to be a healthy profit for each item that I sell. And so that's the choice that I make for my business, and it works well for many others. But again, you get to choose that as the owner of your business. And knowing your numbers and knowing which levers that you change and have the ability to adjust, mainly being price, shipping, and your discounts, knowing how you can adjust those and how that affects your bottom line profit is going to be super, super important. So this is why I love to use this tool, whether it's in here or any other tool that you use. Make sure that you're using a profit calculator in some form as you are setting your prices for your business. And then the final tool that I love to use in eRank that is newer for them, that they just released earlier this year, is their own Chrome extension. So you can easily get to it from the navigation bar and choose extension, and that will take you right to the page in the Chrome Web Store where you can add the extension onto your browser to use the eRank Sidekick. And I think this is a really helpful tool because it allows you to work directly on Etsy when you're doing your research. So when I'm in Etsy, I can turn this extension bar on, and now when I toggle it on, I can see statistics for this page that I'm on based on the keyword that I have typed in, which is just women's shirts, very broad general search. So it's kind of like having a mini version of eRank, but just pinned off to the side while you are working. So I can also click on listings here, and I could sort them by sales if I wanted to. I can see at a glance the listing, a link to the listing itself, the tags at a glance. I can copy these tags at a glance if I wanted to, but I can just very quickly at a glance start to see where are there some highlights on this page that I might want to pay attention to, because not all of these may not have a badge on them. For example, this wildflowers, I can see that it had strong sales. So if I wanted to click into that, I can then start to see some additional information about the specific listings. So again, it didn't have the bestseller badge, it doesn't have a popular now badge, but I can see that there is a sign of demand because it's currently in 20 plus carts. And again, because I'm on the specific listing, I can now see data for this specific listings. I can see the estimated sales, I can see listing information, I can see the tags as well. So if I wanted to grab any of these individually, remember we had our keyword lists, so you can actually star directly from this list. If you wanted to save it, you would just find your keyword list that you got saved and you can star it as you look. And again, you can copy it. You could copy all tags if you wanted to save them somewhere. And you can see the basic search volume as well as the competition. So again, it gives us that basic information. You could even scroll over. There's a tiny little arrow here where you can toggle between those three different columns that you can see in this little mini view. So again, this is just one of those things I find super helpful. If we click into this farther, I know many of you know this shop, that's why I'm going into this one, because it's not really a surprise that it's at the top. They've been a top seller on Etsy for a very long time. But again, I could even see from their full shop view, I can see the overall stats from the shop. I can see the listings that are in this view. So if I'm on their first page, I can see the listings and I can start to pinpoint, are there some that have more sales maybe I'd want to pay attention to. So, for example, if you were looking at those shops that we talked about that are newer and are seeing some early traction and have done really well within the last 6 to 12 months, you could use this Chrome extension as part of your research when you were clicking into those shops and really digging into them to see what's working well for them and maybe what are some of those clues that you can learn from as to how they got successful so quickly. You can turn on the Chrome extension and see their listings at a glance and really pinpoint which ones are doing well directly in the shop while you are researching. So again, this is one of those tools from eRank that I have just found extremely helpful. It's one of the elements and one of the tools that I felt like they had been missing for a very long time in all the years that I've been using them. And so having this available now is just really helpful, and I think really complements the rest of the tools that I use all the time in their platform. Now, as much as I love using tools like this for my research process, I want to make one thing very clear. Etsy does not release sales data or search data. That information gets compiled independently by each of these third-party platforms in their own proprietary way. Some use member data from their users. Some use a variety of external data, such as customer surveys. Some use their own algorithms to determine reasonable averages based on the data they do get from Etsy. And some use a combination of all of the above. The point is, a third-party system is just that, a third-party system. It's a tool. It's not the be-all, end-all. And the only single source of truth is Etsy. That is the one other element that you need to always incorporate into your research process. When I talk about research or looking at trends and data, I always remind you of the importance of doing both and learning the skills of not only researching with a tool, but also using your eyes and your mind and your logic to go out and do a visual search on Etsy, looking for those popular now badges, looking for the bestsellers, diving into individual listings to look for the little red words that give you signs and clues of actual current demand in real time. To look at listings with your own eyes, to be able to see the listings that are selling and learn from them and learn the mock-ups, the color palettes, the keywords that they're using, all of those things live and looking at it on Etsy directly. A tool can help support the process and in some cases help point you in the right direction when you're on Etsy, but you need to learn how to do both. I'll make sure to link some of those videos for you below. I hope this has been helpful for you. Let me know in the comments which tool of choice you use for your Etsy research. And in the meantime, I'm also excited to share that I have officially released my brand new course inside my membership group, and it's called Simply Thriving: Unlocking Podpreneur Excellence. From mindset and goals to success habits and time blocking, after 13 years of entrepreneurship and more than 2 years of print on demand, I consider this course a culmination of what I truly believe are critical elements to support you in not only surviving, but thriving in your own journey. And for members in my private group, it is included as part of the membership at no additional cost. This course also happens to be the perfect segue into the next round of my 75 Thrive Challenge. This is an exclusive challenge inside my group that I developed earlier this year based on the principles that I talk about in the course. If you've ever heard of 75 Hard and fitness circles, it's kind of like that, but instead of an intensive mind and body challenge, this is an intensive mind and print on demand challenge and incorporates 6 unique habits of success using a holistic mind, body, and business approach. We had lots of members love the last round that we did in the spring, so we're bringing it back and starting the next round inside the membership on July 22nd to really focus on getting ready for Q4. Otherwise, be sure to check out my free print-on-demand course in the description, as well as my time blocking series right here on my channel for an even deeper dive on the critical steps for success. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and I'll see you in the next one.